Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. Those interviews are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to competitive teams, racers, rock crawlers, business owners, employees, media, and private park owners, men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low Magazine is a magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in a storefront or on a bookshelf, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we are talking to Drew Burroughs. Drew is the owner of Goatbuilt. He went to Cal Poly Pomona and was in the Polygoats club, I imagine, and has been around the four-wheel drive industry most of his adult life. So, Drew, thank you for coming on board and spending some time talking with us.
Yeah, hey, good to talk to you, Rich. I've been a fan of the show and glad to be on it and kind of tell my story.
That's awesome.
I guess first off, I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Oh,
which is
did I say Pomona?
You said Pomona, which
geez.
is like it's like I don't care, but it's like that kind of like rival. Like, oh, I went to Cal Poly San Luis. I went to the real Cal Poly.
Oh, I had a friend that went to Pomona.
Oh yeah.
As an architect, and for some reason I always say that, but the girl that I went through high school as being like boyfriend girlfriend went to San Luis Obispo.
Oh,
and
cool.
So I should know, but I always say Pomona. So I apologize for that.
Oh no, that's fine. I don't know if you want to start over, edit it.
No, we're going to leave that part in. I don't mind making mistakes. I don't make them very often, so. Yeah. So let's jump right in. And were you born and raised in that area?
No, I was actually born in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
I grew up in Central Valley, California, because my parents were from there, but my parents were living out in North Carolina at the time and had me there. So when I was 9, my family moved back to California. So, but yeah, I grew up there, like kind of, out in the woods, playing in the woods all day, all night, and had a blast living there. Then we moved to Central Valley. So it's a little town, kind of Wasco, McFarland, just off 99 north of Bakersfield.
Yeah. That's kind of like at one time that was nothing more than really a gas station stop.
Yeah, right. Yeah, now it's all prisons,
Yeah, exactly.
Prison town.
Well, they got to put them somewhere.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I said, when I was 9, my dad, so we actually moved, so my family had a 320 acres that my dad grew up on, when he was a kid. So we moved back to that. My parents are the house my dad grew up in.
How old were you when that happened?
So I was 9.
9, okay.
So, went to a little school there, little tiny school. I mean, there was 12 kids in my class, so I grew up around there. I went to McFarland High School, which is some people there's a movie called McFarland USA with Kevin Costner. That was like my high school. And like when I was there, so it's a funny, Hollywood picture made about, my high school. And
really?
I had nothing to do. Nothing. It was like a story about all the cross country, a lot of the Hispanic migrant farm workers running cross country. And so it was a pretty good like Disney movie, but it's pretty good. But so it's kind of I was not involved in the sport or anything, but it was just kind of a funny story about where I grew up.
Okay.
So my dad's a helicopter mechanic. Went to Vietnam, learned that when he went to Vietnam. He was a crew chief on a Huey. And after that, he just he learned a skill, and after he got out, he just kind of did that the rest of his life. So he was in North Carolina working, doing that there. He worked for this missionary group called JARS, and they basically did it was missionaries, and they supported them. Like they had aviation and radio and Bible translators. So they would fly, they had this whole little aviation department where they'd get all the missionaries out. I mean, this is like Papua New Guinea and the Philippines and just pretty remote jungle areas. So they'd get all the missionaries out there and out with little small planes and helicopters. And then they had radios for them to communicate. This is, the 70s,
Right.
And they also had part of their organization, they translated the Bible and all the, whatever the native languages are. So the government gave them some surplus helicopters, but they had to be completely overhauled. So my dad, he went back there and basically, overhauled or rebuilt these helicopters. And then kind of when they got done, he moved back. So, cool. Yeah, back to California, moved back, and my dad had a shop at our house, and he just worked on helicopters there. Basically all the kind of crop dusters around there had the old Bell and Hiller, still piston engine, old helicopters and, spraying. So he just worked on them, locally around there. He had customers all up around the valley. So I kind of grew up, in the shop and literally working on helicopters, ever since I can remember.
That's interesting. Most of us in this industry worked on cars, not helicopters.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I did. Once I started driving, I got into cars. But
right.
That's kind of my background. My dad, he had a CJ2A when he was in high school, driving around that farm, and the would have been the early 60s, late 50s. That was his car, was his old flat fender Jeep back then.
Awesome.
Basically, yeah, I just grew up around mechanical stuff, and I was your typical kind of engineer kid that took all his toys apart and took everything apart in the house and figured out how it worked and tried to put it back together. And was always building stuff and doing your typical kids running around outside all day type stuff.
So did you grow up riding bicycles or motorcycles, ATVs?
A little bit. I had a little ATV. We just drove around the farm kind of, but not really riding on trails or nothing. But yeah, I had a little Yamaha, ATV, as a, 10 to 13-year-old or whatever.
Okay.
Then I got into skateboarding for a while, and I was kind of into that. And, I was in my yard building half pipes and building ramps. My dad's like, oh, here's a saw. I have my own hammer and saw, and go to the lumber yard, buy some wood, and, start building stuff,
Did you draw them all out first?
Probably. I guess I don't remember.
Worry about stress loads
and no, I wasn't that. I wasn't that up on that stuff at the time, but I'm sure I did. I was I did a lot of I wasn't really an artist, but in school I would be drawing airplanes and I couldn't draw a person or an animal, but I could draw a helicopter or an airplane, and I could make a pretty dang good, to scale drawing of whatever kind of, machine I was into, so I guess that was must have been the pre-CAD days,
right.
When you're drawing cars or planes or helicopters, probably mostly airplanes and helicopters, because that's kind of what we were into at the time.
So living down in the valley out there in that Wasco area,
yeah,
going to a school that had 12 in your class.
Well, yeah, that was up to 8th grade, but
that was up to 8th grade. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was it like having such a small class? I mean, and you did that for what, probably 4 or 5 years then?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't like it, because I just, I came, growing up in North Carolina, it was, green, and it was green, and I had kids in the neighborhood. You just go across the street, just run around. And then we moved out to like the farm. So there was like nobody around,
Right.
And then it was hot. I mean, it's hot and it's dry, so it's definitely a different culture shock. And, the white kids are the minority there. So it's definitely like, everyone speaks another language and whatnot. So it's definitely different place to grow up. But it was, I mean, there's pros and cons there too. I mean, we had, you had the mountains there. So I remember, we went up to the mountains a lot, all the Sierras, east of Visalia, you have all the sequoia forest and all kinds of stuff up in the mountains up there. So, I went up there a lot with my dad, up to the mountains there, and then the desert beyond that,
Yeah. Did you have the the aqueducts nearby?
Yeah. We would water ski behind the Jeep in high school in those,
I was wondering.
Yeah.
So you're not supposed to swim in those, are you?
I don't know. I mean, some of them. I mean, there's some that are like I guess the little ones are like the drainage from the fields. You don't want to swim in those, but some of them are the water coming down from, basically coming down from the Sierra. So those probably aren't too bad.
Right. Okay. And when you were of school age, say before high school, were you studious? Were you a good student?
I was okay. I mean, I think, I was pretty smart, so I was bored. So I got decent grades, but I didn't try, and just because, I was just kind of, I was.
Or were you one of those that tested well?
Oh yeah.
Tested well, but not necessarily did all the work.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, how much work do you do in fifth grade? But sixth grade.
I don't remember.
But
fifth grade, I sat behind the piano almost the whole year.
Right. But I think I had behavior issues because I was bored, because
Right.
I knew the stuff, and I was kind of, I wouldn't say I was ahead of everybody, but everybody was kind of behind the grade level, so I was kind of cruising through and bored and whatnot. But yeah, I was good in elementary, high, or up to eighth grade, and then kind of got into baseball for a while, all through high school, and 13-year-old, I kind of got big into playing baseball, so that kind of kept me busy.
What was your preferred position?
I was catching and pitching.
Okay.
So I just baseball, if you're in the outfield, you're kind of not doing much a lot. So I kind of wanted to be in the action all the time. So I was
You can't get in the action any more than the catcher.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm gonna be a catcher, and I was, I enjoyed it and had fun at it. And so I kind of did that, all through high school. Our team wasn't anything, anything special, but I did okay.
How are your knees now?
I don't think they're bad. I don't
That's
think
good. You're
catching.
lucky.
Yeah. I don't.
Okay.
Catching isn't bad because you're just squatting, but I think the kids that played football and stuff where you're running and get twisted knees, and that's probably the guys that have knee problems.
Right. Do you have a lot of collisions at the plate?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm sure at that level they, even back then they probably didn't allow it, so it was kind of not a thing you did, I think.
So when I went to college down in Santa Barbara, I didn't go to Santa Barbara, but I went to a private college down there for photography, actually. And
right.
We, a bunch of us got together and created a softball team and played open league down in Santa Barbara. And down there, you play pretty much all year long. And I played catcher down there, and I had a lot of collisions. But that was an open league, adult, pretty much an adult league.
Right.
And sometimes it was more, I think we started playing softball and ended up playing hockey is what it was more like. So then when did you decide that you wanted to go into engineering?
So in high school, I actually had straight A's in Valedictorian in high school. So I did pretty well. Again, I guess I'm not bragging, but it wasn't our high school wasn't that like, it wasn't that hard, I guess. But yeah, I did really good at math, and I did, really good at science, and then, so, you turn 16 and you kind of start driving or getting more into cars, and I wanted to get a Jeep. I don't know why, but my dad had a Jeep when he was a kid, maybe, I don't know, but so I wanted to get a Jeep, and my dad's all like, okay, he's all gung ho about it because he's in the Jeeps, or was in the Jeeps. So we had this 70, I think it was a 72 Jeep Wagoneer. My parents had it since, I was probably, riding around in it. My mom was pregnant, and
right.
They had it that old. So that was our family car in the 70s, So my dad had like put this old Oldsmobile diesel in it.
Wow.
And he was on this.
Your dad was pretty handy then. That probably comes from, wrenching on stuff on helicopters. I mean.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so it had, those are like those are like the worst engines. So it blew up. So the Jeep sat forever. So then I'm like, hey, I want to drive. I'm like, well, we'll drive this thing. So then we pulled out the diesel engine and put just a small block, built a small block 350. Somebody gave us some small block, and totally budget back then. So we put a small block Chevy in it, and pretty simple. So I drove that for a little bit, and then I ended up getting, at the time, I was probably 16 still. I got it was an 83 CJ7.
Oh, nice.
So I wasn't in a four-wheeling at the time. I just wanted to get a Jeep, and God, this was, 92 or something. So, you get a 10-year-old Jeep isn't, too terribly expensive. So I got a CJ, and then, then I kind of started getting the 4-wheel drive magazines, and you're like, oh, let's lift it and do, you kind of start seeing all the stuff you can do, because back then it was just magazines and no internet.
So you fell down the rabbit hole.
Oh yeah. It's funny. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and everybody, like half the people are that way, oh, I got this Jeep and then I bought a magazine. And, and it's funny, everybody reads the 4-wheeler and off-road back then. Off-road was just the big mud trucks with the light bars, and 4-wheeler was, they all had their little niches, I guess.
Right.
And so my sister lived in Brea, so Orange County. Right. And I'd go down there, and then down there they had 4-wheel drive sport utility on the rack, so, which is totally like hardcore 4-wheeling as they did back then, Right. And this was like the early days. I mean, I probably started buying some of the first issues, with Phil Howell in them. So that was like, totally, kind of, that's my thing, So then I just started kind of, doing modifications to the Jeep, and I'm 16, 17, didn't know what I was doing, but my dad would help me out, and, do stuff, do little stuff here or there, and fix it up. So yeah, we drove that in high school. Literally, I mean, I was my daily driver. We just drove it everywhere, no top and doors in the summer because it's 100 degrees, and soft top in the winter.
So what was valedictorian, played baseball, right. Any other sports?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Yeah. And once you start driving and doing stuff, some people you kind of lose interest in sports, but I still played a lot of baseball and did that.
And then I would imagine you started off with like mechanical drawing or something like that.
Yeah. We had some CAD. We had some kind of basic.
Oh, that's right. You were like in the 90s.
not CAD, but we had basic drafting in high school.
Okay.
And that was kind of cool to me. Like, oh, this is kind of, more the, the old technicals, the big board with the big, like, I forget what it's called, the big arm with the ruler,
Right.
So I did a little bit of that, and kind of that was interesting to me. And then, so I was kind of like, back then everybody's like college, where are you going to go to college? It wasn't, they should have done more trade school stuff, but that's what it was. So, I'm like, well, where am I going to go to college and what I want to do? So, I just kind of, based on kind of what I was interested in and thought I was good at, I'm like, well, I want to be a mechanical engineer, and I want to design cars or trucks or, off-road stuff. You don't really know which one to do. You probably wanted to be like, I'm going to go work for GM or something, or who knows, but,
right.
But that's kind of like, I want to do that. You want to do that. So then, so basically, I just kind of applied to some of the state schools and got into Cal Poly there, which is a really good undergrad engineering school. It's huge, it's huge in ag, but it's definitely like a really one of the top undergrad engineering schools. So, and it was local. I mean, it's 2 hours from, everybody in the Valley, Fresno, Bakersfield goes over to San Luis Obispo, Pismo. That's where everybody goes for vacation or weekends or whatever. So, it was fairly close and cheap at the time. It was a state school.
Right. What did on the acreage that you guys, family acreage?
Yeah.
What was being grown?
So yeah, we never farmed it. My grandfather did way back, but then they just leased the land out for years.
Okay.
So like when I first moved out there, it was cotton and alfalfa, and I think the cotton kind of started going away around there later, but it was mostly cotton and alfalfa on our property. Just the guys that leased it, that's kind of what they grew. Okay. But there was around us was a lot of vineyards and then a lot of almonds.
Right.
And, but those things are, those are in there for years or decades, the cottons is a seasonal, annual thing or whatever. But I think more and more, a lot of it's going more towards almonds and pistachios and grapes. So,
right.
So that's kind of what I didn't do much farming, but just grew up out there, and I was around a lot of stuff. And
did you have
the guy that
go ahead?
I said the guy that like leased our land, he did a lot of grape harvesting. So he had these big, he did like harvesting for a lot of people around there. So he had this whole fleet of these. I don't know if you've ever seen a grape picker. It's this big machine that it's all hydraulic driven. It's this big machine that it drives over the rows of grapes, and it has these fingers, and it just it vibrates the whole vine and knocks the grapes off into a conveyor, and then there's a tractor with a big bucket driving beside it. So they did a lot of the grape harvesting.
Okay, that's interesting. I'd never seen grapes harvested. I know Shelley wants to go and do a harvest picking.
Oh, right.
Go out and volunteer and pick grapes.
Well, they do like the wine and juice grapes. They do it with a machine because it's messy, but the table grapes are all hand picked. Okay. So yeah, it was messy, and they did it at night when it's cooler, and it just, God, you never seen so many bugs. Yeah,
that's why I'm not a big fan of spiders.
Oh, right.
And it's more of the webs, but I never could imagine picking bananas or shipping them or anything, because I've seen photographs of what some of the spiders are that live in those banana bunches, and it's
geez.
There's no freaking way anybody's getting me to do that. Anyway, so then from high school to Cal Poly, what was that transition like? You said you went to a pretty good size high school, though.
Oh no, the McFarland wasn't big. I mean, there was there was 100 kids in our graduating class, I believe.
Okay, that's
maybe
still pretty small.
So it wasn't, at the time it wasn't that big. But yeah, so I went to, basically went to Cal Poly, just next year after high school. So I was a mechanical engineering major. And then you go, so like, the spring, you start in the fall. So the spring before they have like their open house. So I went to the open house and, they have all the clubs there doing their little kind of displays and stuff. So that's when I saw like the Polygoats. So that was like the college 4-wheel drive club, Polygoats. And they had like, they got a bunch of big rocks, somebody stacked in the parking lot, and they had some of their trucks and stuff. So met some of those guys. So then, fall came around, started school. So I started like kind of going to the meetings and hanging out with those guys. And
were you commuting? Did you take your CJ7 with you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we moved over there. So yeah. I mean, that was my car for God, from 16 to, I don't know, 24, 25,
Oh, wow. Okay.
Pretty much drove it every day. So, but yeah, so we drove, took the Jeep and moved over there. So, when right around there, that's like there's like the Pismo sand dunes, which is big. So we were out there all the time because that's just kind of the place you could go, I guess, at the time. So we go out there all the big weekends because everybody from the valley comes out there and they're, toy haulers and trucks and everything else. So we just like run around all weekend in the dunes. And, it's amazing how capable almost any 4-wheel drive is if you air it down pretty low, and most of those people didn't even know it. So you're just out there pulling people out and you're like, you could air down and go anywhere you want, and then, all the people, the toy haulers crossing the creek, you get stuck. So we just go out there and like pull people out and, make $20 or something. But yeah, so I started
beer
doing,
money.
kind of, yeah, totally pre beer money. But, so I started, getting pretty involved with the 4 drive club and, met a couple good, honestly, like all my best lifelong friends are from the club, cause we're all, 4 drive guys are all kind of like a, kind of similar kind of, you know what I mean? I don't know the words, but just kind of like the same type of guy, kind of. So, and you go to all the events you go to, like 99% of all the people there are like all super cool,
Absolutely.
So anyway, yeah, a lot of my, so I ended up, meet all my best friends were in the club and ended up being like roommates with them all and, kind of hanging out with them all through high school. A few of them were mechanical engineering guys. A lot of them, a couple of them were civil engineering or construction management or whatever. But so yeah, we just kind of started, going on, we do a couple trips a year, nothing too crazy, nothing too far. And we'd always go, we had like Ducey Ursham, I can't think of the name. There's all the trails up out of Fresno, Shaver Lake area.
Yep.
There's God, I can't think of it right now, but there's Ducey Ursham and then
the big
Rubicon.
Yep.
Yeah. Then there's, Rubicon. And I mean, we just basically did all that stuff in the summertime. And in the wintertime, we just did some of the other, we kind of, Kyle 4-wheel drive had, some of their kind of big events that we go to some of those. Just on our own.
So did you have roommates? Were you dorm or did you have like apartments or houses or?
Yeah, first year, like I actually have my aunt, an aunt and cousin and uncle lived over there. So I lived with them my first year, then got an apartment with a high school friend the next year. But then the third year, some of my, Polygoat buddies, his parents bought a house there, basically. It was like, here, you're gonna be here for 4 or 6 years. We'll just buy a house and you guys rent it out. And
that's a good investment if you could do it. I know that's a couple of people I went to college with did the same thing.
Oh yeah, so, I mean, at the time, they probably bought this house for $120,000, and 8 years later they sold it for $350,000. So, but it was nice because it was kind of our house and rent was cheap, and two of my Polygoat buddies, they live there. So we were just kind of building stuff in the garage all the time. And then my other friend, Marvin and Dylan, they lived not far, and, similar deal. They, had a couple off-road guys in their house, and we set up a shop in their garage, just, building, doing all our stuff, one thing I forgot to say earlier, but like the Cal Poly, was cool with the Polygoats is they had all these old photo albums. I mean, in the club, I can't remember. The club went back a long time. I mean, that club went back to the 70s. I can't remember.
Oh, you're making me feel old now. Because I started driving in the 70s. Okay.
Well, but I mean, but it's funny how at the time, we're wheeling these, like, a couple guys had early Broncos, which were 70s, and everybody had CJs, which were mostly a lot of 70s. So at the time, and it's cool. We had all these old photo albums from Polygoats from back in the 70s, and they're wheeling these like brand new early Broncos and brand new CJs. So it was kind of funny to see the kind of the old drunk we were driving, and back then some of them had brand new ones,
right,
in all stock.
But you could get, like when the Broncos first came out, I'll bet they were less than $2,000.
Oh yeah.
And nowadays, my God, those things are worth a fortune. Uncut.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, it's funny how I have one of my good friends, Gordon. He had a early Bronco, and he did everything to it. I mean, he actually cut the body and narrowed it.
Wow.
And you're like, the thing's like a piece of junk now, but you're like, God, the thing would have been worth a lot of money if you left it stock.
Little did we know.
Oh, totally. So anyway, we I forgot what path I was on, but
and talking about the photo albums and you guys live in a couple of different houses.
Yeah, we had a good group, just a core group of kind of club guys that we're all good friends, and again, some of them we had a lot of classes together, and just kind of helped each other build things, and went on trips, and then just hung out all the time. So it was a good time.
So did you work at all through high school or college?
Yeah. So in college, I got a job at Jiffy Lube, which was a good experience, God, you get to see, it's funny, I was, not that I was like very shy, but some kids that just aren't, experienced talking to people, but Jiffy Lube was kind of a good job, because you had to, like, when somebody brought their car in, you had to go kind of like try to sell them an air filter, or you had to like upsell them some service, right. So you first start, you're just like scared, like, super nervous, and over a period of time, you just kind of like learn to talk to people, and learn, just learn a skill, and I just, you do a little everything there, but it's just a normal job that you just learn how to, any job, you learn some basic skills, and showing up on time, and talking to customers, and having coworkers and common stuff. So I did that for a few years, and then I got a job. So at Cal Poly, they had a place called the Aero Hangar. It was a legit, like, there used to be an airstrip there with a big hangar. And so the hangar was like a machine shop that all the students could use to build their projects, because students either had, most of the students had like a senior project where they had to like design and build something. And then throughout the courses, sometimes you'd have class projects where you'd have to build something. And then you had, they had the SAE club. I think you've probably talked to some guys. So there's the Formula SAE, which is like a little kind of race car,
right?
And then there's the Baja, mini Baja. So I was actually never involved with the clubs, but so we had this shop there that all the students used. So they had like students working at the shop to like open doors and check out tools, and just kind of, work or run the shop basically.
Right.
You were just kind of helping the students and whatnot. So I got a job doing that, which was awesome, because it's like you had, pretty easy hours, but you got keys to the shop. So we got keys to the shop, and we could go in there literally anytime we wanted. And we had mills and lathes and welders and bandsaws and kind of, they have really nice stuff now, but back then it was like, we must have got like military surplus stuff, so we had some big old, stuff that used to be on a battleship or something, in a machine shop. But anyway, so, it was cool because you hang out with all the club guys that, and get to know all those guys, and then, you help students. So it was a good experience. Just, I mean, like I said, we had keys to the shop, and we could literally go in there anytime we wanted. So, I mean, there was times we just, like, all our buddies were going to go in there all night. We'd just be in there literally all night, order some pizzas and sodas and, work on something all night, building, just cranking some stupid part out of on a manual mill and lathe, but yeah, so you kind of learn all that stuff, and then you learn how to, like, kind of, deal with, the the students would be kind of like employees almost, or customers, where you kind of learn to kind of, like, manage or wrangle these kids that, I was, you get guys like me that grew up wrenching on stuff, and it's not a big deal. But then half those engineering students, like, didn't know, they'd never turned a screwdriver, so
they didn't know the difference between a flat and a Phillips.
Yeah. I mean, so you get all types. So you get those kids, and you kind of have to, like, guide them or teach them and stuff. So it was a good experience. So I basically did that all through college. And in the summers, I'd usually go home and, like, work for my dad, or, work for, one of us customers had a helicopter and a spray truck. So I'd go work for him in the summer. It's funny. I think back about, like, right after our high school, one of my dad's customers, he got this helicopter and a big spray truck. They have these big trucks. It's like an old, F700 or whatever, with a, 1,000-gallon water tank, right? And then, a couple 100 gallons of fuel for the helicopter. And the helicopters would land on top of it, and you'd be underneath, and you would, like, mix all the chemicals, and then you'd pump it. You'd fill the chemicals. It was all, like, liquid, so you'd mix it with water and chemicals, and
they'd land on it. Did they have, like, a platform to land on?
Oh yeah, they'd have some big water tanks on the back, and then they have, like, a big platform on top.
Okay.
So they'd literally, you kind of be like if it was like a truck, the helicopter would land on top of the cab, and then you'd be kind of in a bed, working. So, they'd have tanks on the side. So you would, they'd land, and we'd fill it up, with whatever they're spraying, and fill it with fuel. But it's funny how, like, you think back, and you're like, I mean, I was, like, just 18, and I'm like, he's like, I got this, 26,000-pound truck. It's an old Ford with a manual transmission, non-synchro, with a 2-speed rear end, and this is before cell phones and GPS, and he'd be like, and then we'd start early too, and we'd be like, 5 a.m, we'd show up at his place, and he's like, okay, here's the map, go here and go to the airport and fill up with fuel, and meet me here at this time, and then we'd be there, and and truck would break down, have to figure out how to fix it or whatever, and it's just funny how you think back, you're like, God.
So there's one question I wanted to ask you. It's going to be a jump back for a little bit, but
yeah,
the Jiffy Lube, was that a standalone store, or was it part of, like, Sears at that time?
Oh, it was a franchise. So basically there was like a local guy that would basically just, like, he owned, like, 6 or 7 stores. So it was basically from, like, Paso, Atascadero, San Luis, Santa Maria, Santa Barbara, whatever. So he owned like 6 or so stores. Did they later like get bought out by Sears or something?
Well, when I worked at Sears, a number of different times, but there was one point where Sears and Jiffy Lube combined, and in some of our Sears stores, we would, provide a bay or two
Oh, I
for
see.
the oil changes. And it was, I don't remember if those employees were ours or Jiffy Lube's, and they just kind of like were a leasee. I think they were a
Huh.
leasee or something. They weren't part of the auto centers, because at that point I was an auto center manager, and I don't remember having to deal with those guys, except when our customers would come back and say, my engine blew because the guy didn't, tighten the oil
Yeah.
filter down, something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
I think the first month that we had an oil change place in the store in San Rafael that I had, I think we had like 4 or 5 engines that had to be replaced.
Yeah.
And
It's funny that yeah, basically like the Jiffy Lube, little franchise, they had like a they have like they have all these sales goals, right?
Right.
We want to have like an average of $86 a car, your average ticket, and so they push everybody to be upselling on all the services, and then there's also like it was like their damage, I forget what they called it. It was like their damage like total. So like, okay, we're up to like $2.50 a car in damage, total damages. They just took their total damage dollar amount divided by their total car. So you had the statistic, so you had them, and you get some kind of bonus, if they met their like sales goals, and then if their sales goals were above whatever value, and then the kind of like damage amount was below whatever value. But it's funny how like it's funny when you put it that way. You're like, okay, there's $3 per car that we're like paying out for just like you said, just blowing up engines and whatever. I mean, I'm sure I think one time, I was there. I'm sure one of the girls that worked there like took off somebody's dually fenders, and then
trying to pull into too narrow of a bay door.
Yeah, because they had these little like in between. There was 2 bays, and then in between they had a little kind of an island for the computers, and I always like to work underneath, just because like you kind of didn't have to talk to anybody and stuff, but then you had 2 bays. You had 2 bays to do, 2 or 3 sometimes, and so sometimes if you were busy, and I remember because you drain the oil, and then you'd say like all clear, oil plugs in or whatever, then they'd fill it. And I remember one time they basically like I drained the oil and they filled it and it went back out, and they started the car. You're like, oh, wait a minute, I don't know if that thing had oil in it.
What's that
fill
noise?
it back up and don't fill it back up and don't say anything.
Exactly. So okay, let's jump back to to Cal Poly and the helicopter working in the fields, like on your. So what kind of stuff were they spraying?
Oh,
Was it
God, I
more
don't
like
even
fertilizers and stuff, or
Yeah, it was all God. It was the nastiest stuff. One time we were spraying. Not kidding. It was garlic and fish oil. We were spraying on something. I mean, it was all kinds of. I mean, it was almonds and it was grapes. I mean, it was kind of everything. But who knows?
you haven't developed any like a third ear or some kind of an odd twitch or something?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Not yet.
That's good. You're not growing, appendages
No.
that you're not supposed to.
No, not
Okay.
yet.
Good.
I'm sure we didn't wear. I'm sure we weren't wearing the proper PPE because we were probably, so hot. We were probably out there with our shirts off, in the summer. One of my best friends at the time, he kind of worked with me, I guess. So he was just two dudes hanging out. so anyway, yeah, it was so basically, Cal Poly did the whole thing. Trying to think of anything else about Cal Poly. So yeah, basically, so this was like the mid late 90s, because I graduated like in 2000.
Okay.
But to back up, so we started wheeling, and then we at the time wheeling started progressing. I had my CJ7. It was a stock. Basically stock when I got it. With a inline 6 and a 5-speed and Dana 300 and all that. So then you start reading the magazines and you're like, oh, they're swapping, and I can get this Wagoneer front axle and I can shorten one side of it and it bolts in. So we started doing that stuff, at the shop at school, and we'd send, Curry was always in the magazine, so we'd send nobody made chromoly, axle shafts at the time, so we'd just take our shafts and we'd ship them to Curry, and they would like cut and spline them, and we'd go all the pick your parts and wrecking yards and get all the Wagoneer axles and all that stuff. I mean, at the time, 35s were like, big, at the time, because that's all they made. Like a BFG, all they made was like 35, and there was like the Swampers and stuff,
Yeah,
that
and
were bigger.
you get some big. You could get some of the tires, especially the bias ply stuff, that was bigger, but
right. But again, this is my daily driver, so like I need just kind of a just kind of a decent mud tire, so it was always like a 35 mud terrain or something. But so yeah, the Jeep, basically we ended up trying to think of all the stuff I did to it. So then, I ended up getting like an early, I got an early, those early 80s CJs, they had this like computer controlled carburetor that was terrible, and all this smog stuff on it, which had constant problems. So AEM had made like so the problem was, I mean, it's California, so everything had to be like carb approved, and all that stuff, all the stuff you bolt on. But, I put a header on it, and AEM had come out with this basically like a little throttle body fuel injection system that was like probably one of the first ones that was like, carb approved. So I had put that on there, and, I always had problems with it. But it was crazy how like AEM at the time, right. They were like this little shop in like Gardena or somewhere that just did like import tuning stuff. It was this little shop. I mean, when I went down there, and they just, because it had so many problems, and they put it on the dyno and tried to get it fixed or tried to get it right. But this is funny how it's a kind of a big company now, but it was like kind of nothing back then. And I'd always drive, in the magazine, you'd have, my sister lived in LA or Orange County, so I'd always go down there, and in the magazine you'd have, because the magazines were in LA, so it was like the hub of off-road was like Southern California, all the shops and the Dixie Beck and 4 parts. And then so I'd always go down there like Tri-County Gear and buy stuff down there. One time, do you remember Brian Chuchua Jeep?
Yes.
They had I guess they had got bought out by Donavy or something, but they'd been a Jeep dealer down there forever.
Right.
So they had this big like garage sale, like it was really cool. So we went down there and bought all kinds of stuff at this kind of Jeep dealer garage sale. They just had all kinds of cool old stuff. So yeah, just kind of doing mods to the Jeep. I ended up eventually we did a spring over. I kind of built a Dana 60, rear end with disc brakes, Moser axles, and then the front, built a 44, went spring over. Later on did at the time it was like throttle body Chevy V8, so we swapped I got a 80, 91 Chevy throttle body 350, swapped that in there with the NV 4500. That was kind of the hot deal at the time, and
right.
Got everything worked great. It's amazing how much, you had to jump through all these hoops to get smog legal, and it was like so much simpler, so much more power, so much cleaner, and I mean, it got better mileage. You had that power and torque with the right gearing. So build a cage, just kind of do all the Jeep mods, through college, and so we started. So 4-wheel drive. So we read all the magazines, and so the hammers just opened up. So I remember there was an article in 4-wheel drive sport utility about like sledgehammer and jackhammer, and that was like the trails that Victor Valley 4-wheelers opened up. So they kind of had a little article about it. So one day, like me and my friend Scott, we just literally drove. We're gonna go for the weekend, and by the time it got there, we were the only ones actually going. So we literally drove out there. It's a good, what is it, got to be a good 5 hours
Yeah.
from Slow there. So we drove up there, ran sledge, ran jack, and messed around for a couple of days, and drove home. And we had to, we had CJs with 35s, and it was hard, but it wasn't. I mean, nothing like it is now. So we'd end up going out there like a couple times through college, on spring break or in the fall. And then we'd always do like, it was fun. We had a couple of years, it was super fun. Like one of my good friends he was in Fresno in the summer, and I was in Bakersfield, and we'd all like meet up and just go up to Shaver Lake or Rubicon. We had like a good 4th of July Rubicon trip every summer, so that was always really fun. So we always had some fun trips back then.
So 4th of July, that means you came across those evil trail guys, the pirates.
Oh yeah. I remember that was like the early days of the pirates, where they were kind of like, oh, those are the pirates.
Because 4th of July was always their initiation weekend.
Oh yeah, I didn't know them at the time, but I'm sure Lance was up there and Kevin Carey and all that stuff. I remember, I totally now later on when you kind of put two and two together, you kind of like realize who was up there and whatnot. And that, and that was back when you could camp at Spider Lake. That was crazy there.
Yes.
And this little sluice was like insane, and everybody would just camp there and at Little Sluice and party there. I mean, most people like went to Little Sluice and back, went there and out.
Yeah, most people didn't go beyond that.
Yeah. But we'd always either like go, it depends on when 4th of July was. We'd somehow try to get to Tahoe for the 4th of July, because it was like this big party, just college kids or whatever. So we try to be at Tahoe for the 4th, and we either like end up in Tahoe or we'd like start at Tahoe and go back to the trail. So that, that was always pretty fun.
So when you're doing all these modifications to your rig and your fellow club members, were you designing and building parts yourself, or were you store buying them?
It was like, we'd store buy what we have to, but we would try to make stuff,
Right.
Obviously you're not going to buy, make gears and axle shafts and all that stuff, but obviously, but we would, if somebody made some like disc brake bracket, we would just try to make it,
Okay.
or, things like that. So, and I mean, I remember so many times I would just like drive home for the weekend, tear my Jeep apart in my dad's shop, and thrash on it all weekend, and then get it back together to drive back Sunday night to be at school. I don't know how many times I did that. And then basically, like in the summer, like all summer, like my Jeep was apart in my dad's shop, and I just drive one of their cars around, and for you kind of get out of school and you'd have like a month to like do some huge project, and then try to get it together for the 4th of July Rubicon trip.
So then when did 4-wheel drive as a business happen for you?
So in like kind of my last year in school at Poly there, one of my so this would be like the late 90s. One of my, classmates, just a guy I had some labs with. He was from Southern California, and he had worked at Swayaway for the summer. And Swayaway had just bought Custer shocks. So they were, we were kind of starting to get into desert racing, and coilovers were kind of starting to be a thing for the rock crawler Jeep guys. Right.
Right.
So a friend of mine, like, he's like, oh yeah, I worked at this place, and they're making shocks and stuff. So I was, so I kind of had a little connection. I was like, oh hey, I heard, it'd be cool to work there. He's like, oh yeah, call the Brian Skipper, and or I'll call him. I don't remember how it worked out, but yeah, basically I just kind of went down there for like a summer internship, just to kind of do whatever for the summer. So I ended up staying there for like 6 months. I had another kind of one of my Polygoat buddies. He was from there, so I like lived at his house for the 6 months, So yeah, that's basically my introduction into the industry. So I worked at Swayaway. So at the time they had bought Custer shocks. So Walker Evans started making, I don't know if you know the story, but basically Custer was I don't know what they did, but they basically somehow they knew Walker Evans. So Walker Evans wanted to make these big shocks. So they started making the shocks for Walker Evans, which became Custer shocks, which were badass. And to this day, nobody makes a shock like Custer did. So Lance King was the engineer CAD guy there.
Oh, really? Okay.
So
that's
so
the
basically, so somehow Custer, I don't know what happened. They just kind of we're done with this gig. So basically, Swayaway bought the Custer shock line, and then Lance King left and started King Shocks. So Swayaway makes. They kind of started out doing like a lot of the, Southern California, as everybody knows, it's like the off-road racing hub. So it all started with Volkswagens. So Swayaway made a lot of the Volkswagen suspension parts. So Volkswagens have torsion bars for the rear springs and actually front springs, and they have they have those independent rear suspensions, so they have those axle shafts. So Swayaway made all these spring plates and adjusters and torsion bars and all this stuff for Volkswagens. So then they also made we call them sway bars, but they're actually anti-sway bars, right? Or anti-roll bars. We just call them sway bars. So they had a CNC tubing bender, and they would make all these like aftermarket anti-sway bars for cars, because like a car, a sway bar is just a bent piece of, usually it's a solid bar that they bend and make it in a shape and bolt a link on the end,
Right.
So they had a CNC tubing, or you could bend solid on it, but they had a CNC bender, and they made a lot of the aftermarket sway bars. It was all private label stuff. So some company like Hotchkiss was a big customer. Like, they made all these like Chevy Camaro suspension kits, and they'd have their, a bigger sway bar. So they would make all these different private label sway bars on the bender.
Okay.
So then they
like
started
a job
making
shop.
Yeah. And then so they started making they took over Custer, and they basically were just doing the Custers. They ended up changing a lot of stuff from Custer, but basically, so I started working there, just doing kind of shock design, or just doing, I didn't really know anything at the time, but just doing CAD drawings of, just doing revisions and new parts, and, getting into shocks and getting into the desert racing scene. And we did a lot of axle shafts too, because, all that Volkswagen stuff is just a spline shaft that they heat treated all out of, 4340, 300M or whatever. So we actually did a lot of like axle shafts. Like now it's common, all the stuff Spider-Trax makes in Brannock, all the double splined floater shafts, but we made a lot of those at the time. So I kind of learned a bit about torsion bars and, axle splines, and learned a lot about just kind of, I guess, there's a whole little thing about just torsion bars and axle shafts, as far as stress and strain and strengths and spring rates and spline fitments and all this stuff, and heat treating and all that stuff. So pretty cool stuff that I really enjoy doing, and just not, it was a job, it was also stuff that I like to do.
And that was while you were still a student, but like during the summer?
I basically took, I was going to do it for the summer, ended up staying for, through the fall. So I was kind of there for 6 months. And then, so I went there for 6 months, and then I kind of went back and finished school, so I kind of got done with school in June. So then June, I went back and just worked at Swayaway full time.
Okay.
So, anyway, basically after school, we moved down there. One of my good friends from school, Dylan, I ended up getting him a job at Swayaway he was a mechanical engineer. So him and I both worked there, and we got a house together, and, he had a Toyota rock crawler. So, we just kind of had our vehicles we were working on and wheeling and working there. And it was pretty fun because we got to go to a lot of the desert races and, just spectate, but, do the whole contingency vendor thing. And then work with races, tuning shocks and tech stuff. And, so kind of got my feet wet a little bit into the whole desert racing scene, working. Yeah. We had one of our guys there, Mike, he raced a 10 car with a guy. So we went to the races and helped out with him and, went to Baja and kind of all the races around at the time. And, so at the time, that was the time. So yeah, that was like 2000-ish, I guess. The Jeep rock crawler scene, the competitions were just starting. We went to like an early one at Cedar City. I know you talked about that a little bit, being involved with that. I don't remember what year that was, but it was definitely.
I want to say 98.
Yeah, well, yeah.
99.
So I'm trying to think. It had to have been like 2001, maybe. Okay. We went to, I don't forget if it was ARCA or what, but we went to the Cedar City thing. And so that whole industry was kind of, so, that everybody started building TJs, which were coils and links. Right. And then it kind of everything moved from leaf springs to, they were trying to scab on a coil spring and a shock on a, whatever, they had leaf springs, so the coilovers started to become popular, so we kind of got, at Swayaway, we kind of got hooked up with John Curry there. He built a couple, his red Fire Ant or, all of his TJs they built at the time. And, he all had Swayaways. So we kind of worked with him a bit and kind of got to know those guys. What Avalanche Engineering is building everything. I mean, I think they had a lot of Swayaways, but, for some reason, like all those guys were running Swayaways. So I got to kind of meet and talk with a lot of those guys. I remember helping like Pat Gramillion on that. He built that like independent buggy with the Hummer, the Hummer suspension, right. That had coilover. So I helped him. I think I traded Pat Gramillion a set of shocks for a welder, So yeah, the that whole industry was kind of taken off with the rock crawling guys with the coilovers, So we can, like I said, we just worked with that whole scene and did that. So yeah, 2000, I kind of officially got done with school, then just worked at Swayaway full time.
And how long were you at Swayaway?
I guess 3 years there. So I had my Jeep. It was kind of, it was a sprung over CJ with a V8 swap, and, it was my daily driver. So then I bought a Grand ZJ at the time. It was just my daily driver. So basically then I cut the Jeep apart. I had, now that I'm, working at a cool place that makes cool shocks, I'm going to build this like, super cool, like desert rock crawler Jeep, So, I built that in my garage for, over, God, I don't know, it was probably had to been 2 or 3 years, So yeah, I think when I worked at Swayaway, I don't think I ever had my Jeep running. It was a part cut. It was literally cut. I mean, I literally cut it in half and built the whole, I kept like the front half and the front 2/3 of the frame, which was a mistake because it's a piece of junk, but I built this Jeep with the coilovers and kind of somebody had made like a fiberglass kind of a, basically sides, basically bolted on fiberglass sides and got a Shannon Campbell hood on it, So I built that Jeep and,
is that the one that made the cover of the magazine? Yeah.
So yeah, at Swayaway, I kind of had just gotten the Jeep done, and Dylan and I actually ended up leaving Swayaway about the same time. We moved down to Orange. I had got the Jeep done, so we moved down to Orange. He worked at Donho, and I was kind of doing, I don't remember what I was doing, but I was actually going to work. So Bob Gordon was going to start making shocks.
Okay.
So him and Robbie had been making the internal bypass shock, which is basically what Fox is making now. It's like the internal, it's like what the Raptors have, right?
Yes.
It's got the internal can. So, they claim they invented it all. I don't know who's right, but it's whatever happened. Fox basically patented it. So then Bob was going to like make shocks. So I was going to work for Bob or Robbie making shocks. But then Fox patented it, and then he's like, okay, well, this isn't gonna fly. So that just never panned out. So I ended up just some like kind of word of mouth, got hooked up with, it was Full Traction Cal Mini. They're up in Bakersfield,
Right.
Which is kind of where I'm from. So I ended up going up there, moving back up there and working for them for a few years. Because I'm living in Southern California, and they're like, oh, you can go to Bakersfield and buy a house, and I did, which was cool, and so I started going to a lot of the events with those guys at Full Traction, and so we went to probably the first year I was there, we went to we'd go to TDS, and go to Easter Jeep Safari. So I had that Jeep, and at the time it was pretty ahead of its time, I guess you'd call it. I don't know what you want to call it, but it was definitely like way out of the box. The kind of race.
It was
kind
more
of a
racer.
race Jeep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we were in Moab one year, and we were like, one of the writer, one of the it was Christian Hazel, I guess. I don't remember who. I kind of got to meet a lot of those guys through the years through working at Sway in Full Traction. So those guys were like, hey, this is a cool Jeep, whatever. Let's, you want to do let's shoot it for a magazine feature, and you're like, yeah, sure. So, because at the time, like we'd go out we're like always jumping that Jeep. It would just like, it would just like
It
jump,
liked to fly.
Yeah, it was fine, So yeah, we went out and did some photo shoot. It was out at the dunes. It was out in the sand dunes, like on the way to like behind the rocks, I guess.
Yes.
So we went out there, and we were just hitting some jumps, and they got that cool, shot, jump in the sand dune, and that it came out in the magazine. It was on the cover, which is super cool, and then they had the whole little article on it, so that was really cool. So then that's kind of like right after I moved to Bakersfield. So then I got Bakersfield. So I had my own house with my own garage. So I wanted to make the Jeep was only like a 95-inch wheelbase. So I'm like, I need to make this thing longer. I'm going to change all this stuff. So I ended up cutting it apart and working on it for a couple of years and getting it redone, I guess. So yeah, I kind of did that for a couple of years, got to, stretched it and changed the suspension around and, kind of basically redid a lot of it.
You don't by chance still have that Jeep, do you?
No,
Okay.
No, I sold it. Yeah. It was funny how like it's changed hands a few times, but man, every year it's like out of King of the Hammers. I always run into the guy like, oh yeah, I got your old Jeep, and but yeah.
But he doesn't have a cover. With,
yeah, right.
with the launching it off that sand dune, with your goggles on.
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
So oh yeah, totally. So yeah, we went to all the off-road expos and all the Moabs and the TDS, and we go out to the Hammers a lot. At the time, I ended up meeting Frank Aliotto. So he's one of my good friends. So I ended up. I built a cage. I built a couple of cages for him in my garage there. So got to know him real well. So that was early 2000s. No, that was like 2003, 2005 ish, I guess. So at the time, one of my friends from Cal Poly, Dave Schlossberg there, him.
Right.
He was just starting Poly Performance. He told the story. So, I hooked him up with Sway Away and a lot of the kind of industry or connections he started selling. And, I helped him out designing parts, and he was just a friend of mine, like, oh, here, you need to, call this guy or whatever, or start selling this. And I kind of helped him a lot with just tech info and connections and just, he started making Hymus Limus spacers. So I just do some CAD drawings for him. So he started Poly Performance, and that, it's a whole other story, but but he did really, he got into I mean, again, he told the story. He got into a niche where, he was, desert racers have, Cartec and McKinsey's and whatever, but, he was the guy selling to all the rock crawler guys, because, he got, started, early on with the internet. So he did well with that. So he grew the business, obviously is what it is today. And then he kind of got to the point where, we wanted to start making stuff. It's either stuff nobody made or something he was buying from somebody. Hey, let's just make this thing in a machine shop. So
bring it in.
So basically, So basically, I moved over to San Luis, and then we started Poly Performance Manufacturing. Him and I as partnership. So basically, I kind of design and build a lot of the parts, and then Poly would sell it. And one of the first things we made, we made a nice like TJ coilover kit, because everything at the time was they're all there was like the FabTech or the Skyjacker thing where it's all kind of bolt on, but we're like, let's just make like a nice cut all the brackets off and the coil buckets and like make some shock hoops and weld them on. So we started making those, and just we kind of started making, at the time, like you couldn't buy all these nice brackets and tabs to build your four links. You were just buying some kind of generic tabs from some Circle Track catalog, So I was like, let's just, with my experience at Full Traction, it was all designing sheet metal brackets, and sheet metal is in like 3/16 and quarter, but we, design all these, I kind of learned how to design all these brackets in CAD and get them all laser cut and formed and make fixtures and weld together. So, making lift kits and the things that they did. So we started making a lot of like just the universal brackets, just like, hey, I need some like axle bracket to, weld onto my axle with the right bolt size and the right spacing, or some shock brackets. So we kind of made some like specific brackets, for that type of stuff, because everybody's building, link suspensions and coilovers at the time. So we just started making a lot of those kind of universal brackets. And nowadays, I mean, basically it's all the stuff, Artec and, there's a dozen different companies kind of just knocking each other off, making all the same stuff,
Right.
But we were kind of like the first ones to kind of make a lot of that stuff. And we made like the Dana 60, the hub gear, drive gear. We had those made. And we just started kind of making a bunch of cool, rock crawler builder parts, under Poly Manufacturing. And then JKs came out, in 2007. So we bought a 4-door JK and a 2-door. We bought a 4-door. So like we're going to make some suspension parts and bumpers and rockers and all that JK stuff. So we kind of started out early doing that. And then they had this, one of the early, like, I think it was Off-Road Magazine. Somebody had like a JK suspension shootout where everybody had to bring a 2-door JK and put your suspension kit on it. And we're going to, have all the companies meet up in Park, Arizona, and drive them and test them and evaluate it. So we did that. We got a 2-door JK and had a 3-4 inch suspension kit. So we did fairly well with that kit. And then so we just started making all the JK suspension kits. We made a long arm kit and some good short arm kits, and made some bumpers and rockers and cage kits and all that stuff. So kind of started selling that more through Quadratech and other distributors, and the business was growing, and, Poly was growing, and it kind of got to the point where, I was kind of done in a partnership. So I decided to sell my half of the business to Dave. So I did that. And I guess I skipped the part where we did a lot of stuff with Fred Williams. He kind of came to us or to me or with a lot of the tech information, and we helped him do that, the kind of infamous. He had his big suspension geometry article in Peterson's 4-Wheel and Off-Road that we helped him with. That was pretty popular. So he wanted to build a buggy. So I had wanted to build like at the time it was like guys were building tube chassis, but they were all custom. And I was just like, hey, I want to build a standard chassis that we can just like, here, weld this chassis and ship it to you and you put it together type of thing. Where guys were doing that at the time, but they were pretty much all like one-offs and, some guy's garage, right?
Right.
And I didn't want to build complete buggies, Twisted did a lot of that stuff. I just like, let's just kind of figure out like because I did everything in CAD. So like, let's just design a buggy and let's just make it. And this is our buggy, buy it the way it is or not, and then we could sell, then Poly could sell them all the shocks and the rod ends and all the parts to go with it. So Fred Williams wanted to build the fun buggy. So, we ended up building that for him, which it just took a big detour from what I wanted and what Fred wanted. So it just ended up being like just a custom buggy, but it was really cool. And like, we made some super cool stuff, on the build and he got those portals on it. And so we ended up doing the fun buggy, which was a lot of good press. Cause God, that was, I don't know, over a couple of years, it was a dozen different articles,
Right.
So at the time, we never followed through there building the buggy, the chassis. But we had a bunch, we had a lot of requests about, hey, I don't want to buy the whole thing, but can I just buy like the chassis plans from you, and you're like, yeah, no, it's like, it's so much work. It's like a ton of work to produce something that you could use. And then what are you going to do? Just go give it to your buddies and, or put it out online, so everybody can copy it, who knows? So that never happened, but just kind of gave me the idea of, making like plans or whatnot. And at the time we started, the tube laser cutting kind of started becoming like available and affordable, available, whatever we're going to call it. Cause we were getting some parts tube laser cut at Poly, or to back up. So Poly got into some legal problems with the name Synergy Suspension. So, to back up, I guess. So we wanted to, at Poly Manufacturing, we wanted to because there was Poly Performance and Poly Manufacturing, we wanted to kind of separate the two name-wise, because now we're trying to sell our products to other resellers. So we didn't want to like be competing with Poly. So we wanted to like branch off and give it a different name. So we came up with Synergy Suspension. Later they had to change it to Synergy Manufacturing or something, but basically Poly Manufacturing turned into Synergy. And now they're kind of going more towards the bolt-on parts. I don't think they really make much of the kind of welded builder parts.
Right.
But anyway, so with Fred's buggy, we got that done and kind of, at the back, I don't, but basically, so I got out of the business, and then I had the idea to make a buggy kit and get it all laser cut. And I'm like, with the laser cutting and the CAD design, I mean, the stuff fits really well. So, I mean, I'm like, I should just make a kit where,
people could buy a chassis kit.
Yeah. You could like, here's our standard thing. I'm going to get 10 of them cut at a time and buy the kit. And, it was nice because, shipping a whole chassis across the country is really expensive, but shipping the kit, we can, you can pack that all on a pallet.
Yeah.
And shit, I could, at the time nowadays with diesel prices, it's more, but you could ship that almost anywhere for $300, So basically I started Goatbuilt, just my own company so I started my own company, Goatbuilt, and my plan was just to make these chassis kits and then, maybe make some cages and making whatever stuff, because I kind of got the whole CAD design and tube cutting figured out. And then with the chassis, I wanted to make a kit, but then like you can buy the tube chassis, but we can design all the shock mounts, all the engine mounts, all the panels, all the motor mounts, so the winch mount. I mean, pretty much we can design all that stuff and have it laser cut, so you can just buy it and you weld it together, So,
and that's
so
what
I started.
That's what you started to do.
Yeah. So yeah, I started Goatbuilt, and then designed a chassis. Took kind of put on Pirate. At the time, Pirate was the thing, still. And then it was a big hit there, and went out to King of the Hammers. King of the Hammers. 2011, 2012.
Okay.
So yeah, did K, and it was just a big, kind of a pretty big hit there, just because it was different. Nobody at the time, nobody was really, at least rock crawler guys, nobody was really, getting the chassis laser cut. The problem is it's all the CAD design, because, most guys are just kind of building the garage, cutting and notching too, but the CAD design is just the whole like big step between building the chassis and getting a laser cut. Somebody's got to design this thing in CAD, and do all that work, which was what I kind of did.
Okay. And that was one of those, was like what Jason Reeves bought. Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay. Because he raced with us in Dirt Riot and had one of your chassis.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He bought one of the early ones. Yeah.
How many chassis do you offer now?
Well, we basically, so our main chassis, I called it the Ibex, which
Right.
so the Ibex is like a species of a goat. So to tie the whole Goatbuilt thing. So basically the Ibex is it's the mountain goat with the big horns that's on the side of a cliff, So that's your kind of stereotypical mountain goat, So that's our Ibex. We make our Ibex, and we make a 2-seater and a 4-seater. They're kind of like LS engine, Atlas transfer case, 14-bolt Dana 60s, whatever, 40-inch tire. More of a recreation buggy. A lot of guys some guys have raced them, or a lot of guys wanted to race them. We just, I'm like, I'm going to make a recreation wheeler buggy, because there's going to be 100 of those to one racer guy,
Exactly.
So I'm like, some guys have bought them in racing, but this is not what I kind of planned or designed it to be. So then later at the time, I wanted to make a TJ chassis. So like, hey, I wanted to let's make a tube chassis that you can drop a TJ tub on and have kind of a, badass Jeep, but like part buggy, part Jeep, that you can run the top and doors on and kind of run it on the street if you wanted. So we do make a chassis like that. It got once we started designing it, it kind of went crazy, where we don't use much of the tub. We basically cut off the sides and the cowl and stick a Jeep, sides and cowl on, and we make a whole new floor panel. But it's basically a buggy that looks like a Jeep, so we're selling a few of those too.
Awesome. And what other, is it just pretty much chassis is what you're doing?
No, with the chassis, I started making, you're just like, hey, I need a gas tank. Well, what do we buy? So I ended up designing a gas tank and had a local place rotomold it. And a lot of the parts I made, it's made for a chassis, but all these other guys will buy it too, that are putting it into whatever buggy or truck or Jeep or whatever they're building. So, the gas tanks were one. So we sell a few of those gas tanks. It's like a nice poly tank, so it's not going to, all these aluminum tanks crack or split.
Right.
So it's not going to crack. And
especially
then it takes
if you tab them. And I see so many of those tanks tabbed.
Yeah, they're tricky. But it takes just a drop, like an off-the-shelf Chevy truck fuel pump that drops in there, and it just works really well. The fuel pump does, I'm sure you've seen tons of guys with fuel problems or fuel pump problems or whatever on the trail, but you have zero problems because it's a nice OEM type pump. And then we part of the problem, I designed the chassis around an LS engine because that's what everybody's doing. It's cheap and it's easy and super common. So everybody buys a truck engine, or there's basically a truck Tahoe Suburban type engine they drop in there.
Right.
5.3, 6 liter. So the problem is that the power steering pump's down low, So, on these rock crawler buggies, everybody's building with a triangulated upper link. The upper links come up and they hit the power steering pump. And also, we're all buying like a high performance pump from PSC or Howe or something. So a lot of guys, a lot of times we want to convert it to a different pump. So on the LS engines, I started making, I had got the CAD solid model from GM through SEMA, and I basically designed some power steering brackets to move the pump up, but also adapt to different pumps. So that kind of started a whole other kind of part of our business where we make all these different kind of power steering pump relocation conversion brackets they're specifically for LS engines.
Okay.
But basically allows you to, because a lot of guys are running dual pumps if they got a rear steer, or we have, things to move the alternator to the other side and we have mounts for like 4 different pumps. So we do a lot of those for guys. I mean, it's not just, it's funny. We get like rock crawler guys, we got Jeep guys, we get a lot of the pre-runner guys, and building some kind of mini trophy truck, and they need to put a big Howe pump on it or something, and then we get like all kinds of random hot rod guys, and we got there's all these guys. They get Mustangs and they put 5.3 Chevy engines with twin turbos on them.
That's sacrilege.
So we get those guys buying brackets and whatnot, and we just kind of started making a bunch of little kind of, a lot of the stuff was made for our buggy, but it kind of crosses over to like any other kind of off-road vehicle, and so we just do a lot of that stuff.
So a question for you. The LS, like bracketry that you've got to lift the pump, is that the LS, is the LQ motors close enough to the LS? Because I know it's an LS design, but it's the cast iron. Are the mountings the same?
Yeah, all the bolt patterns the same.
Okay.
On the LS stuff, there's different belt spacing, so it's basically how far front or back the belt is from the engine.
Okay.
So like the Corvettes, the belts are really close to the engine, and the Camaro they're a little further, and the truck they're a little further out. So they all physically bolt up the same to the head. Most of the stuff kind of bolts to the heads. All that stuff kind of, and there's different water pumps too, but all that stuff kind of it's all bolt on, and we have like different length spacers for the different belt spacing. Okay. So it's cool because it fits. I mean, gosh, it's 12, 15 years of engines that all that stuff kind of works on,
Right. I just had, I'm in the process of building another Cherokee, an XJ, but It's got a LQ4 in it with a 700 R4 behind it and an Atlas. Okay. And so I don't know what Novak used bracketry wise. It's something I've got a list of everything. I just haven't really paid attention to it, but it's good to know. There's so much of this stuff that I don't have any clue on because I'm an event promoter. I'm not a builder.
Yeah. Well, it's a whole like little thing you got to figure out. Yeah. It's just every little part of that thing is like, with transmissions and shocks and just so many different systems and components, you got to kind of like learn and figure it all out.
How it fits. Yep.
Yeah.
So what's coming in the future for Goatbuilt?
I think it's more the same, I guess. To back up, we, I guess so I started the business in San Luis Obispo, because that's where Polly was. And then my wife, she's from Wisconsin here in the Midwest. So, once I was kind of done with Polly, I was kind of like, well, we don't have to be here for any reason. I mean, it's nice living here, but it's expensive. So we decided to move back here where she's from, and we're kind of like southeast Wisconsin, because we were in San Luis Obispo. It's like, we could buy our condo we live in we could buy our condo we rent for $350,000, or we can buy like a nice big house and property and a shop in Wisconsin, So we ended up moving back here, and it's nice because it's like I'm right in the middle of Chicago and Milwaukee, and we're kind of in the hub of manufacturing in the U.S. There's so much stuff made here, so it's been a good move in that regard because I have lots of steel suppliers and laser cutters and you name it, it's less than an hour away. So and then I always tell people, it's funny, like whatever I paid in California, you knock off 20%, whatever laser cutting you had done or whatever you're doing. So with my chassis, we used to outsource all the tube laser cutting, and it's a pain because these chassis, I mean, there's literally 100 different tubes. It's fine if you're getting like, hey, laser cut me 500 of this one part. It's easy, but you're like, hey, I need 6 of this and 5 of that, and I need, it's literally there's 100 different tubes, and we're getting like 10 of them cut at a time, and so it's a big order and a big chunk of change, and we would laser cut them, and then I have a mandrel tube bender, so we would bend them and kit the chassis. So we kind of got to a point where it was just a big backup, and it was just a pain. So I ended up buying our own CNC tubing cutter. So we started cutting our own chassis in house, it's been just a huge, really nice deal. So we started actually cutting. We're actually doing a lot of other I guess we're doing a lot of job shop type tube cutting and bending. I mean, we've been cutting and bending a lot of other people's chassis. There's a lot of guys that are like, hey, I designed this chassis in Bentech, and I need to get it cut, and they'll get one of them or they'll get 5 of them, So
that's awesome.
And they're kind of our competitors, but I mean, they're all so different, It's like every chassis builder has got kind of their own style and their own they're all different. So,
right.
I'm like, they're, so whatever. I'm like, hey, somebody's going to cut them. So might as well do it and make money doing that. But, and it's kind of, and I think it's helpful for a lot of the guys because we kind of speak the same language. It's like, when I was trying to get stuff tube cutting, when I was trying to outsource it, you talk to 5 different places and only one of them they kind of get what you're doing, and they can do it and want to do it, and they can do it at a decent price. Or now, like, hey, we cut tube chassis, and the guy's like, hey, I need a chassis cut. Yeah, no problem. That's what we do, and it's easy, and with the CAD stuff, I can help them out with that. So we've been doing a lot of that. But yeah, future wise, we're just doing more of the same. And we've been like, God, COVID's been just crazy busy. I think everybody else I've heard on your show has been saying the same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
The economy's been moving, the industry's been moving, so we're just busy. I just need to focus on kind of hiring some more people and just growing the business, doing what we're doing.
So how many employees do you have now?
We have two full-time guys and a part-time guy.
Okay.
So we have, I just kind of got lucky and stumbled across a couple of really good guys that they're smart and show up every day and do a good job. And
that's all anybody asks for.
Literally, there's no BS. They're just solid dudes that are never never get any BS. So it's been nice. So got lucky with those guys. So it's I'm hesitant now because it's like, nobody wants to work now, and you're like, can you even hire anybody now? I don't even know, but I just got to kind of hire some more people. I have three small kids now, so I've been busy. My wife works full time and has been going to school, so I've been almost working part time lately, running the kids around. So I just got to hire some more people to kind of do what I can't do.
So let's talk about how you met your wife. She's from Wisconsin. You're from California. How did that happen?
Oh, she basically moved to San Luis.
Okay.
She's a nurse. Her name's Tilly. So she's a nurse, and she kind of got a traveling gig out to, a lot of the Midwest nurses, they're young, and I want to, go do fun stuff. So they all get a traveling gig in, California,
Right.
It's pretty common because, after I met her, a lot of her like nurse coworkers it's funny how many of them are from the Midwest. And so she moved out there, met her, and we got married out there in California, and then, we wanted to have kids, and she's like, oh, let's move by my family. They can watch the kids and stuff. So we did that.
Awesome. And how old's
So,
your oldest?
we have 7-year-old twins and then a 6-year-old,
Okay.
all girls. So
Wow.
one of them's the kind of crazy one who's kind of jumps on anything and rides it or drives it or whatever. So, you know, we started going to, I grew up, but like, Crandon, Crandon is,
Oh,
Crandon, but
yes.
Crandon is it's the
It's the big
if you're
house
in,
for
if you're
us.
in desert racing, it's the Baja 1000 of, desert racing. It's the, you know, short course race. So, I mean, it's in northern Wisconsin, but it's, 4 hours away. So we started going to those races, just me and my wife, and we just go have fun for the weekend. And then we had the kids and bring the kids. And one of them's just like, I want to race. So it's Champ Off Road now that does the series. So they have a little Razor. It's a Razor 170. So it's like this. I mean, they're kind of these cheap little Chinese made razors, but so they have a class where they're like air quotes stock, stock with like this, like the cage and all the required, the necessary safety stuff.
Right.
So it's a total beginner class. So she wanted to do that. So we did that. I got a razor and put it, built a cage and built it. So she raced it all last season. So we're doing that all summer. I mean, that's, there's 6 races in 3 months. So basically that's kind of what we're doing.
Excellent.
Which is fun. It's, I like doing it, it's a lot of work, but you're kind of doing wrenching on stuff and doing all that. I don't get to wheel too much anymore with the kids. I just haven't, I had a buggy that I wheeled and then somebody wanted to buy it. So I'm like, oh yeah, no problem. I'll build another one. And then, 6 years later, so I still haven't built one.
Yeah, I get it. It's like when I was a landscape contractor, my house was the shittiest one in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen.
Yeah, and even if even if I've had time to build one, it's like I'd hardly have time to go wheel it, and it's tough being here because like there's not really much wheeling here. I mean, the closest thing we have is the Badlands, and that's 4 hours away. Or you're making a big trip, out to Moab or somewhere, so it's tough. It's just been tough lately with the business and the kids to find the time to do all that stuff.
Well, you're still young enough and your kids are young. Enjoy them. Run your business. Do what you can. And then, as they get older, you're going to find more time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's good to do it,
Yeah. No, I ended up buying a razor because, up here there's up north there's a bunch of snowmobile trails, and in the summer they're ATV trails. So now the UTVs are huge, so you can just drive UTVs up there. I mean, most of the stuff's dirt roads or even like street roads, but there is some decent, there's nothing technical, but there's some decent fun trails,
And some of that stuff is like old railroad line, where they may have been logging or something at one point, and now they're not using those spurs, so they're just they just turned them into trails. I think I've seen a lot of that, at least in the Northeast, in like Vermont, New Hampshire.
Yeah, we had this like pipeline. I'd never been on it, but they had this like pipeline trail where there's this cleared path of the trees. They put some power lines or pipeline or something that they had some trails, but it's people. You take it for granted living out west because there's no public land here. You get east of Colorado, there's like no public land to off road. I mean, people don't realize that, but there's none. I mean, it's all private parks. Probably east of Colorado. So, but it still amazes me how many guys all over the country wheel. It's funny with our buggy kits, how everybody kind of thinks we ship them all to California and Arizona, but man, we ship them all over. I mean, a fair amount go out west, but a lot of them don't. So
right, Pennsylvania, that Virginia, and then down into the South, Tennessee, Alabama. Those are pretty big areas, aren't they?
Oh yeah. But then, yeah, there's a lot of good parks, especially in the South. There's a lot of parks,
there
or
is.
off-road parks. So I think there's all, like there's Jeepers everywhere, and the rock bouncers are big down there. So there's a lot more of that. But yeah, we've sold a lot of parts or chassis all over. But there's been a few down there.
Cool. Well, excellent. I know it's we got started at 9:00 your time. That's the evening, people. And I'm on the West Coast, so it only was 7 for me, so it was pretty easy.
Yeah.
But Drew, I want to say thank you so much for coming on board and and sharing your story with us. And if anybody's looking for a chassis, I mean, Goatbuilt, you heard him. He's got the possibilities for you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for having me. It's been good to talk to you. I haven't even seen you in a few years, I'm sure, but yeah, I've been enjoying the show, so I'm glad to be on it and kind of share my story. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
Well, have a good night.
Okay,
Thanks,
you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Conversations with Big Rich. Please let your friends know about this podcast. Let us know what you think of Conversations with Big Rich. Please forward ideas to me, contacts of those that I should attempt to interview. Leave a rating on any of the services you found us on. We look forward to your comments and ideas. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and grab all the gusto you can.